functions.
Greetings, all you wild and weirdos, weirdettes out there in Wild Weird Radio Land. It is I, Ron. That is Joe over there. And boy, do we have a full house tonight.
It is going to be, and we've got a great crowd.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. Everybody, just go ahead, start, sharing this out. Get as many people in here as we can. We do have the legendary Stan Gordon is with us tonight. We are going to be talking about some incredible stuff, high strangeness, the whole consciousness aspect of this thing, and we're going to be going into a deep dive. We've also got our very own little psi asset running around here. Mr. Adam Good will be joining us at some point. Dave Roberts is also in the house I'm not really sure why Dave's here, but Dave Roberts no, I'm kidding. Dave's here to answer some questions for you guys as well. So please ask your questions. Understand this. We will be moving throughout this show. It'll be a little different, but we're going to get to all your questions. We'll star them, and we'll, as we take breaks, we will get to all those questions. So get your questions and put them in there.
The Scott Daddy has been summoned.
So real quick before you do the next one, I have set the goal because you guys have been doing this really good. It's a game now. I've set your goal. You usually had to do 10 in 2 hours. Now you got to do 15. You do 15 in these 2 hours, and you're going to get something. You're going to get to see something that no one's seen before, except for a very, very small group of people. And then we're going to get your reaction to it. And then, just to make sure that you understand how rare this is, I'm going to go back and scrub this. So only people who are going to get to see this are the people who are on this live, if you understand that. That's what's going to happen.
Yep. It'll be exclusive to you guys.
Until it comes out.
It'll only be on the live, and then it'll be gone, and you won't see it again until it's released officially.
Yep. And that'll be months from now. So, all right.
Thank you, everybody who started kicking in the door before we even opened them. Fantastic. You guys are absolutely awesome. We've got Power Band Sasquatch hanging out in the loft here. We've got Eyes in the Woods running around. Then Jen is in the house. What's going on, Jen? Good to see you. Dances with Orbs. Hello, family. Hello, right back at you. Kenny Hess is in the house. LR's in the house. What's going on, LR? Good to see you. I hope you're staying warm out there. Both of you guys over in Canoa City. I know it has been an icy mess for sure. And then everybody up north, good grief. Rachel Plower, hi, everyone. How have you guys been? We've been cold. We've been colder here than Anchorage, Alaska, like twice this week. So that's been a thing. Gary Schuler's in the house. We've got Terry McCullough hanging out with us. Jordan Booker. Sweet. I made it. Hi, everyone. How you doing, Jordan?
Welcome.
You made it on time.
Welcome, everyone.
Good job, Jordan. John Smirk is here. Then we've got Eyes in the Woods says, it's just starting to warm up in Vermont. My pup missed her daily snowshoe. We couldn't go out when it was 5 degrees. It was -6 yesterday morning when I left the house.
Yep.
It was so cold. Linda Sigmund's in the house. What's going on, Linda? It's good to see you. You guys are going to be able to catch Linda in Paranormal Horizons in a very upcoming episode.
Very upcoming, yes.
Octopus with No Friends is here. What's going on, Octopus? Uvaru's in the house. How you doing? Then Seth Beans Lamille is here. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. Let's see. Nancy White is here. Then, of course, Adam Good's in the house. Angie's in the house. What's going on, Angie? Then let's see.
We do have a full house, don't we?
We do, yeah. We're sitting at 40 people active at the moment. Spookfest is here. What's going on, Spookfest? Good to see you, brother. Donella Alien. What's going on?
Welcome, Donella.
Love that name. Then let's see. That's Don. I believe that's old Donna Ho over there, based off the puppers. Then Kenny Hess. Thank you, Kenny Hess.
Thank you,
We
Kenny.
appreciate you.
Super sticker.
Um,
Yes.
Yeah, wrong button. They changed the name on this a couple weeks ago. I'm still not used to it. Bigfoot, Littlefoot's in the house.
Good.
What's going on? And then Dances with Orb says, "Hey Joe, had to put some obsidian in the box your stone was stored in. Weird stuff happening around it. Good luck." Sweet. Even better. I have a whole shelf behind me. If anybody doesn't know, or you might have missed it, back here are artifacts from every research site that we've ever conducted research in. I have taken a rock, a leaf, something to bring home to keep here at the house.
What could go wrong? You saw that Brady Bunch episode back in the day.
Right. LW Marshall says, "I made it to 33 degrees today." Oh, buddy.
33 degrees. All
We-
right.
We got up to 30 in downtown Charleston by the river, and I felt like it was a heat wave.
Yeah.
Larry Hose is in the house. What's going on, Larry? Good grief. You guys are just flooding in
I know.
everywhere.
This is crazy.
I'm caught up, though. Julie Bug. What's going on, Julie Bug? Good to see you.
LW Marshall, massive blessings to LW Marshall for that incredible breaking through the ice. Thank you so much for that.
LW, brother. We love you, man. Speaking of LW Marshall, you guys really need to go over and check out his podcast, The Paranormal Pavalier. Hopefully, I'm saying that last word right. I've never heard it. I've never heard it out loud before, ever. But aside from because normally I'll scrub through the introductions on shows, but, and I'm really bad about that. But yeah, go check out his show. He has some absolutely amazing guests on all the time. LW is connected with some of the coolest people in the research community for all things unreal, so to speak.
Is that the word you're going to
I guess that's what we're going to go for. Just things that are just unreal and hard to believe. Things that are all things paranormal, really. Things that just really kind of what some might consider fringe. If you're watching this show, you wouldn't, but
if you're watching this show, it's perfectly normal.
The normies would. But you guys need to go check
Pretty
out
sure.
his show. It's really good. He's had everybody from Hellbent Holler to almost us. We've got
Almost.
a schedule.
Yeah,
We've got to
gotta
nail
get in
down
there.
a date to get with him. But check out his show. It's fantastic. I listened to it the other day. James Nelson.
James Nelson, thank you. Multiple
Thank you,
blessings,
thank
my
you.
friend. Multiple blessings.
We've got a new
All right.
person over here in the chat. Oz Rotten. Thanks
Welcome
for jumping
aboard.
in here with us.
Well, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Okay, you guys, anyone new, please feel free to go over there, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any more of the shows. We've got a bunch of you guys who have come in and just continue to stay with us, and bless each and every one of you, because it's been an incredible ride so far. It's only
That
gonna
it
get
has.
crazier. So, it got so crazy that we actually really didn't plan this, to be honest with you. It just happened because we had already scheduled to have Stan on sometime back. And it just worked out that, Stan joins us in the middle of this craziness that's going on. And who better could we have on the show at this point to give us some clarity? So everyone, please do welcome Mr. Stan Gordon to the show.
So
Let's see.
Good evening, Ron. Thanks for having me back on the program. Appreciate it.
now
There he
brace
is.
yourself, guys, because Stan can't hear me. He can only hear Ron. So it might get a little funky. I'm going to ask some questions, and you'll hear those repeated right back to Stan.
Yeah, it's going to be like we're at mission control, so and he's in space. So when Joe has a question for Stan, I'm going to repeat it after Joe. So just bear with me. It's all going to be good. We're going to make it through this show, and we've got everybody else over there. They're going to bring them in a little bit too. Anyway, you guys can hear Stan, right? Let's make sure everybody can hear Stan.
Oh, yes. I can hear him loud and clear.
Yes, we've got hello, Stan. Stan is cool to meet. Yeah, we think so too. Thanks for joining. Okay, everybody looks like they're pretty excited to have you here, buddy. So, Stan, what has been happening since the last time you were on the show?
Oh boy, we could spend hours probably talking about all the strange activity. It has been just nonstop. 2024 has just been nonstop, and we're already getting reports in 2025. But last year, again, it is among the reports in more recent years where it just seems to be a steady flow of information coming in all year round. And, Ron, you and I talked about this previously. My hotline's been open since 1969. So I receive reports regularly every year, all year round. But over the years and past years, generally when the winter starts coming in, it gets colder outside, we have snow, generally reports begin to quiet down, which is a normal thing. But as I had mentioned to you, back in October of 2021, when things generally get quiet, we had a surge of close-range, low-level UFO incidents going on here in Pennsylvania. And then we began to get other cryptid activity, UFO activity, and that just continued through 2022, 2023, 2024, and now. It has been nonstop all year round in all kind of weather conditions, but last year was extremely active with all kind of reports. What we're seeing in more recent years, we're definitely seeing an increase in detailed reports, whether it be Bigfoot sightings, cryptid accounts, UFOs. Most interestingly, those small balls of light, those orbs low level, those cases are continuing to occur. Just amazing case in the last few years. We can talk about those, I'm sure. And a lot of daylight UFO sightings, low-level UFO sightings, incidents and electromagnetic effects being involved. It has been a very, very strange journey. But I'm seeing definitely an increase in very detailed reports of both the cryptid nature and the UFO nature. And it's quite interesting. I'm sure we'll talk about some of those cases.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we've all kind of agreed to this point that, me and you have talked about this for a while, that it's really, these things are on the rise. This isn't a, I know some of the skeptics are like, well, people have more cameras. They have more of these, eyes looking for these things. But no, it seems like these are much more on the rise, because you said that some of these aren't coming from, pictures. They're coming from actual firsthand accounts, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the case I'm telling you about, they're coming from firsthand accounts. And yes, we are getting photographs and videos in. We're getting game cam pictures, security camera pictures, phone video footage. So we're getting, there's a lot that's been going on in the last few years. And, but once again, a lot of the cases, particularly like Bigfoot sightings, last couple of years or so, more and more sightings where these things are being seen in daylight, 50, 60 feet away from people, where they're describing these things from head to toe. They're getting very detailed accounts. And we've also had kind of an increase in smaller ones being seen. So generally in Pennsylvania, a lot of reports get are probably a little over 6 to 9 foot tall, 7 to 9 foot tall is pretty common. But over the years, historically, we've had incidents, we've had smaller ones seen around, 4 to 5 feet tall. And in the last couple of years, at least the last couple of years, we've had an increase also in sightings of smaller ones being observed as well as the taller ones.
Oh, wow. Isn't that something? And that's kind of, I guess we've observed that, right, Joe? And that's what I'm trying to get at here. Like,
right. These have been things that we've seen and experienced a lot of. And one thing that I've noticed is that in the last year, and this could be just because of the way our research has changed and our research styles have changed, we've been getting a much broader variety of reports, and we've been getting less and less Bigfoot reports.
Yeah, we have what he just said there, Stan, was we have actually been getting less actual Bigfoot reports and a lot more of these high strangeness reports, a lot more of the orbs, a lot more of the the weird stuff, so to speak.
Well, I'm getting a lot of very strange reports and different type of reports with a different pattern showing up. Which again, a lot of high strangeness type of things are going on. Even some of the cryptid reports are very, very strange. Even in the last year, it's just amazing. And these are credible people. And let me say right from the start, Ron, and again, if I'm stepping on somebody's toes, sorry, I can't hear anybody but you. So I'm not sure what's going on when you're not talking. Most, being out in the field since 1965 after the Kecksburg case, I've been out in the field for years and years now investigating these incidents. For many years, I had teams of scientists and engineers and all kind of research specialists investigating these incidents. And what we found back then is the same today. Yes, indeed, many UFO sightings and even cryptid accounts quite often are misidentification of natural man-made objects. So let's get that out of the way. We're always looking to try to find explanations before we say it's something that's unusual, unexplainable. So year after year, yes, we get a lot of reports from Starlink satellites, and recent weeks we get a lot of Venus and Jupiter reports. So a lot of things can be explained. But what I'm saying is that a lot of the cases being reported are close-range, detailed observations, amazing reports from very, very credible people. You'd be amazed at the backgrounds of some of the people calling in here. And I can tell you, 99.9% of them still want no publicity. Because a lot of it, because their job positions, their families, they just don't want to get involved publicly. But they're very credible people, and quite often I'll get reports months later from somebody who apparently is not aware of other cases in their area, and I have records pertaining to their particular day or in their area when something similar was taking place. So that's kind of interesting as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do we have a question over there for Stan already? Is that what I'm seeing?
We've got two.
Okay, let me scroll up.
Looks the first one is Strange How. I've got it up on the screen now.
I'm looking. Oh, Strange How. Okay. Referring to what? How, like,
how strange these reports have gotten.
Oh, how strange the reports have gotten as per what they were baseline is what they're asking. Okay. Yes. So yeah, that's actually a good question. Because we did say that before, like how these things have gotten stranger. How would you rate that, Stan, as far as like an escalation in strangeness, or are some of the factors changing at this point to something completely different than they were?
Well, we're getting we're continuing to get reports of some of the so-called typical cryptid reports in the last year. For example, an increase in Thunderbird sightings, very close-range Black Panther accounts, Bigfoot sightings, and then a whole menagerie of all kind of other things going on. But I think probably what really has sparked my interest more and more has been this very definite increase, especially since 2022, of what I've called mini UFOs for years. So I was aware of these cases going back in the 1960s. And over the years now, I've investigated numerous reports from the public reporting what many people call orbs. Of course, an orb is something spherical. So these small orbs of light, quite often very close to the ground. That's what's so interesting. They're not high altitude. Yeah, we get a lot of reports of orbs or spheres high in the sky. But what I'm most interested in is these many reports of these things very low to the ground and very close to people. So over the years, I had incidents where these things in daylight were pacing, following vehicles, entering people's homes and cars through open windows, sometimes going out right through the body of the vehicle. I've had them now appear inside of people's homes. What's really interesting is some reports, again, going back around 2022, where these things in daylight, good condition, and get all these reports where the weather conditions were good. We're not talking what appears to be what we know about ball lightning, which is a very rare meteorological phenomenon. These appear to be something much different. And the objects are generally spherical, but not always. But most of the time they're spherical. Sizes range from the smallest I've heard out is about the size of an oversized firefly. And then a lot of them are around the size of a golf ball to a baseball to a foot or two in diameter, but some are a little larger, some a little smaller. They're generally spherical, generally luminous, various colors, blue, white, orange has been very, very big in recent weeks and months, different colors. And some of these reports, these things are very luminous and very bright, but when they're moving, they're not casting any light from the main source. So that's kind of interesting as well. I'll give you a couple examples right off the top of my head. You want me to do this now, Ron? Or do you want to go into something else?
No.
Well, but before he goes into that,
what do you want to do?
The light.
Okay, so I'll go back into October of 2020.
Hang on one sec, Stan. Go ahead, Joe.
The light that was not casting light.
The light that was not casting light? Yeah.
That's consistent with some of the stuff that we've reported.
Yes, it is. What you just said.
As well as the colors.
Very consistent in the color changes as well. Hey, I'm going to bring on two of our other guys that are out there, and that way they can sit in here with this, and they may ask questions as well. Everyone, Adam right here in the middle, and that's Dave over there on the end. Dave Roberts over on the end. Stan, go ahead.
Okay, so going back to 2022, again, a lot of really fascinating reports. So I'll just go to the top of my head. And so October 2022, one of my research associates, Jim Brown, up in Fayette County, PA, which is a very active county, probably one of the most active areas across the country. But, you know, we talk about the Chestnut Ridge, and I'm sure we'll talk about that tonight. Chestnut Ridge is a very, very active area here. It extends through Westmoreland, Fayette, Indiana County, and southwest PA, and extends down to a few miles outside of Morgantown, West Virginia. So for years and years, there's been a history of incidents all along the ridge, but especially Westmoreland County, Fayette County, very, very active. Again, last year, very, very busy with some amazing reports, some of which I'm sure we'll talk about tonight. But anyhow, so Jim Brown's a real high-tech guy. He's been researching as one of my associates for many years. So he's been lucky to be in those areas that he can investigate. And so in October of last year, as I recall, it was around 6 o'clock in the morning. It was a very cold morning. This lady finds her husband sound asleep outside on the porch. He was in his robe and his slippers. He would never be outside and sleeping at that type of weather condition. When she finally awakened him, he told her that he was walking out to get the newspaper, which had just been delivered, when the small sphere, I think it was around a foot or so in diameter, white sphere, was hovering very close to him. He said he got so tired all of a sudden he couldn't stay awake, and he went over to the porch and fell asleep. But 3 days later, outside of Ligonier, PA, which another very active area, so you got the Chestnut Ridge, and then you go into the Laurel Ridge area. That's also very active, especially outside of Ligonier and going up through Route 30 and up towards Johnstown. That area is very active, up towards Somerset County, Fayette County. But anyhow, so 3 days later, around 2:30 in the morning, this woman is awakened in her home. It's an old historical home with high ceilings outside of Ligonier. She gets at 2:30 to go to the restroom. She comes out of the bathroom, and about 5 feet away, she sees this, I think it was about 1.5 to 2 foot diameter, dark blue sphere hovering in her living room. And it has a dark mass moving around the side of it. And she told me she remembered taking one step closer to it. She felt like a slight electrical jolt. And then she said she got so tired she couldn't stay awake. The next day she felt very weak, very sickly. And she told me, she said, listen, she said, I'm an insomniac. I don't fall asleep like that. And she said she had no explanation for it. So that was kind of intriguing because we had two similar physiological effects reported within a few days. And on occasion, we're hearing other possible incidents where these things have been approaching people now with different types of physiological effects. And we're hoping to be able to document this better, but there's something that's just starting to unfold more and more. And but these cases are amazing. There was another case that Jim Brown investigated, I believe it was the year before, in the afternoon in Fayette County. And the husband and wife were out in the field. I think they were planting some bushes or something. And they see this bright silvery object not that far away starting to float in their direction. They thought at first it was a Mylar balloon. And then as it gets closer and closer, it's getting brighter and brighter. And I realize it's not a balloon at all. It's a bright, kind of a silvery, shiny, spherical object that got within feet of them, very, very close. And suddenly there was like a snap, if I remember, like almost like a firecracker going off. And there was like a slight electrical jolt, and it went from the object to the field, set that part of the field on fire. They put it out immediately. Apparently along the path, they also noticed another small fires that came across. And as there was that electrical jolt, they heard that noise, and the object disappears. Now, Jim got out there within, I believe, 45 minutes. Had this been a firecracker, a Mylar balloon breaking up, there would have been residue material everywhere. There was absolutely nothing there. And there have been other reports that Jim and others have looked into. I mean, we've had reports of these things actually knocking against the windows of people's homes in daylight. Jim had one was on the ground on a road in daylight where the guy was approaching it, and he had to get past this thing. It was blocking his passage, and the guy would have to move it to get home. So the guy opens his door. He couldn't figure out what this thing was. I think it was around 2 foot in diameter. And as he opens his car door and begins to walk towards it, it fades away and disappears right in front of him. That's just an idea of some of the cases coming in that are very strange.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. Hey, Joe, you're muted. I can't hear you this time. Oh, wait.
Dan here.
There you are. Go ahead.
You had me muted.
No, you were muted. I don't know why.
It just says host had you muted.
I just unmuted you. You unmuted yourself, and I muted you back. So,
question for Stan: has he heard anything about the Bigfoot sighting by the railroad tracks near Vandergrift, PA? Okay,
so here's another question for you, buddy. It's have you take that back up, Joe? It disappeared.
Let me go find it. It was like.
There it is.
Up.
Have you heard anything about a Bigfoot sighting by the railroad track near Vandergrift, Pennsylvania?
Was this recently or in the past?
Yeah, is this a recent one or in the past? Let's see what they say. Oh. Okay.
Last year.
I don't recall by a railroad track. Over the years, there have been numerous incidents around the Vandergrift, Apollo, that part of western Pennsylvania. There have been a lot of reports. I would need more detail and a better idea. I could try to look it up and see if I have a record for it, because could be. There were so many reports, I may not be remembering right at this point, but I don't recall that. If anybody has information on it, have them get in touch with me. But I don't recall that. Historically, there have been sightings around that general area for years and years. And I remember, I believe it was around Vandergrift. I believe it was along the river down there years and years ago. Not a Bigfoot sighting, but I remember a person telling me, oh my gosh, this may go back 30 years ago, of a large, I believe it was a large cylindrical object hovering over I think it was the Kiski-Menis River, if I remember, in that general area. And this thing was hovering above the river and sucking water up out of the river into the object. So we know these things have a fascination, for water as well. Now, I told you about this, Ron, long ago. We discussed it. I said the pattern I found many years ago is this. Many close-range, low-level UFO sightings and many encounters with Bigfoot and cryptids often occur in the vicinity of energy sources.
Yep.
So you have many incidents around power plants, high-tension power lines, gas wells, gas lines, all type of radio communication towers, cell phone towers, bodies of water, railroad tracks. That's very, very common. That continues to be reported.
Absolutely.
And we loaded up for him right
there. And we can verify that as well. I think we've seen quite enough around high tension power line cuts and waterways. We have another question for you. This one from Tony Breeden. What's your take on the psychic component of the 1980 Rome, Ohio night siege encounters, in which one of the female witnesses claimed to have a psychic connection with her Bigfoot lover? That's a real question.
Oh boy. Well, I was not direct. I kind of remember some of those. I remember reading a report back. I think it was 1970, early 70s, 73 or so. I can remember this, that some of the things that were turning up were similar to things I had been investigating here in the early 70s, especially in 73, when we had that massive UFO Bigfoot outbreak in Pennsylvania. It was the biggest outbreak in history involving both UFOs and Bigfoot. And my teams were out there day and night investigating, and that's when a lot of some of the most unusual and high strangeness cases ever turned up with Bigfoot that we documented. I'm sure you read that Ron in my Solid Invasion book, some of those accounts. I can't remember all those details, but if you're talking about people who claim to have some type of telepathic communication with Bigfoot, is that what he's referring to?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So anyhow, and I can tell you, of the hundreds of Bigfoot cases I've investigated in Pennsylvania over the years, very, very few people claim that they've had some type of mental or telepathic communication with a creature, but there are a few. And some of these, again, were very credible people who were extremely reluctant to tell me about it. But there was one case that I was a witness to that involved this type of thing. So I'll tell you the story. And by the way, as you know, Ron, I've been doing this now for over 65 years, and I've never personally seen a Bigfoot or a UFO. I've interviewed thousands of witnesses. I've seen a lot of evidence, but I haven't seen one myself. So going back to this incident, it's 1980s. It's an area along the Chestnut Ridge, again, between Derry and Latrobe in Westmoreland County, which is a hotbed for sightings every year, including this year already. We're getting reports of things around the general area. So anyhow, I remember getting called out by some of the landowners who lived at the bottom of the ridge, and they were talking about this huge hairy creature had been coming down from the top of the mountain, coming down towards their properties and scaring their animals. So my team and I get out there, and there's a small group of people there who want to share their accounts with us. One of the persons in the group very reluctantly said, I don't know why this is happening. I don't understand this, but at times when this thing's around, it seems as though it's mentally trying to communicate with me. So our conversation goes on. People are sharing things, and this person suddenly says, this creature is mentally telling me right now that tomorrow morning, the next morning, about 15 miles away in Indiana County, there's going to be a very strange UFO incident over that town of Homer City. And early the next morning, over the town of Homer City, there were multiple reports of this very strange, loud sound, like something large was hovering over the town, but nobody could see it. It was so unusual, they called the fire department out. So how do you explain that?
Wow.
That's very reminiscent to some of the things that
and
took
by the
place.
way, historically, so Homer City, now they decommissioned that power plant, I believe it was last year, but that power plant was a major power source throughout this area. I think it was 1967, they were building that Homer City power station. When they did, for weeks and weeks, there was a major UFO wave going on in that area. It was making a lot of local news. You had a small UFO group up at Indiana University, and one of the professors up there, he and his team were investigating some of the sightings, and then they invited me to come up to speak at the college. And it was a lot, but historically, ever since that power plant was built, all around that part of Indiana County, even in recent years, we had cryptid sightings, Bigfoot sightings, Thunderbird sightings, all kind of UFO sightings. Now, they decommissioned that place. We still hear some reports, but there's other power plants not that far from there, and we're getting reports close to those power plants. So that's a very active area, and some of that area is on that end of the Chestnut Ridge also.
That is absolutely amazing and so reminiscent of the 66, the TNT area, and some of what we actually documented you'll see in the future. But we have another question. You are popular tonight, my friend. Stan, what types of other phenomena have you heard reports of as having psychic interactions with the witnesses?
Okay, that now I'm right offhand. The only thing I can think of is that with some of the old UFO cases.
Agreed.
Well, I say old, but yeah, have I heard this in more recent years? Somewhat, yes. I believe, one of the first researchers in the country to get involved in alleged UFO abduction cases. So back in the 60s. And, of course, I founded my first research group in 1970, but we were getting reports also from the 60s that people hadn't reported before. So we were looking into those. And the situation with those type of reports is that they can be extremely involved. You can spend weeks and months and years on one case because they can go on and on and on. And we are just very limited because, one, we all have full-time jobs. We're doing this all voluntarily. We all have families, and we did the best we could, but you just couldn't spend a lot of time on one case because we were getting hundreds of reports coming in year after year. So we were very busy, but some of these people I've been in touch. I talked to one of them 2 days ago. Some of these people I've been in touch with for 30, 40 years or more. And this gets very involved, but there were some people, for example, it was not uncommon back then, and even today, that there are some people from the time they were very young children, apparently, they began to have incidents where they had some type of apparition. They had paranormal experiences. Some think they lived in haunted houses. Throughout their lives, they had not only paranormal phenomena occur, but they also had UFO encounters. Then some later had Bigfoot encounters, cryptid encounters with the balls of light. Sometimes other people were with them. But interestingly, as I found out now from numerous people I'm in touch with, that as time went on, their children began to have experiences, and now their grandchildren. So this goes through generations of families. And some of those people from years ago would tell me they would be awakened during the night, that they would have this overpowering feeling that they needed to go outside or go somewhere. And that's when some of the alleged experiences occurred, where allegedly people were taken aboard a craft for a short time, or people went outside in more recent years where people went outside and saw a UFO, and in some cases got pictures of it. So that's the one thing I can think of right off the top of my head, where there was some type of possible psychic paranormal aspect to it.
That's a great one, actually. What do we have down here, Joe? We got another one. Dan's with orbs. Another question for Stan. Just one word. Livermore. What does that mean? I have no clue.
I think that's
I'm very familiar with Livermore.
Okay.
And in fact, I got a really interesting report a couple weeks ago. I ran to a man and got a report from him of an incident happened July last year. He and a friend were fishing in the, I believe it was the Conemaugh River, not too far from Livermore. Early morning hours, they see this green orb, this green sphere in the distance coming across the sky. It came downward and dropped right into the Conemaugh River and never came out again.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of, so Livermore is kind of positioned. It's an old historical home where a major flood pretty much just wiped out that whole area. There's been a long history of ghostly apparitions, Bigfoot sightings, cryptid accounts, UFO accounts for years all around Livermore. So that's right on the edge of Derry Township, out around Blairsville, that general area where, again, that's a very active area for Bigfoot activity, cryptid activity, UFO activity for years and years and years. And I'll tell you how I got involved in the Chestnut Ridge area back in, tell my memory is tonight, May of 1969. I remember getting a call. I think I got a call actually from the state police. And there were reports that afternoon right along Route 22, 119, that area outside of New Alexandria, which is not that far from Livermore, that cars were pulling off the road, watching this very large, luminous, cylindrical, cigar-shaped thing hovering right over top of the trees along the highway. And I went out there, and after I got the report, and I found some of the witnesses, and they believed that the thing looked like it was landing down in the woods. Well, we searched around, couldn't find that. But I spent a few days out there tracking witnesses down, And that's when some of the locals start telling me and asking me, have you heard all the stories about all the weird things up in that ridge with these big hairy things, strange lights, strange sounds? And I remember one person back then telling me that they swear they saw like some type of an opening occurred on the side of the ridge, like some kind of a doorway or opening years and years ago. It's the only time I've ever heard a story like that. But that's when I first heard about the Chestnut Ridge.
Wow. So it actually has a history, like a real,
very long history.
Yeah,
it's not just something in more recent years. I mean, there's a lot of history of a lot of weird things, a lot of paranormal activity up on the ridge, ghostly apparitions of Native Americans that people have seen. Even I understand recent years, old carriages, all kind of cryptid stuff, weird stuff. Even some of the last couple of years. Oh, and I'll have to tell you about a couple of ones from last year because some of them are just really amazing.
Wow, absolutely amazing. More questions coming in. We have another one. This one from Melinda Sigmund. Stan, I as well as a few other people I know have had Bigfoot encounters in dreams. Now, these dreams seem very extraordinarily real. How do you feel about that?
Well, yes, have I heard people say they've dreamt about it? Yes, I have. I don't get that many reports, and it's really hard to say what connection there is to it. I mean, some people believe that, a lot of what they're dreaming, to some of these people over many, many years ago, I kind of recall that they seem to have an indication after the dream, there seem to be some things that may have related to the dream they actually supposedly experienced, but there's just not a lot of detail about that.
Yeah, it makes sense. It absolutely does. 1 second, guys. I've got two other gentlemen over here. Do you guys have any questions for Stan? You're sitting there. You've been quiet, and I mean, it kind of looks like Dave. Maybe, I don't know. You got any questions, Dave?
Off the top of my head right yet.
Your volume's down, bud. I don't know what's going on there.
He said not off the top of his head.
Not off the top of his head. Okay, so we're gonna have to play that with him. Okay, cool. Adam, how about you?
To be honest, everything that's being asked is what I've been thinking about asking. So I mean, it's
all playing out. It's all playing out the way it should, right? Is that what you're saying? All right, folks, thank you so much for asking your questions. Continue to ask your questions throughout the show. I do want to remind you, please, if you have not done so, hit the subscribe button, make sure to leave a comment, etc. We, of course, do have the challenge going on over here. We have the goal set. I'm not sure where we're at with it. I think we're at like 5 of 15 or something like that set in. Any donation counts. We're not asking for big dollars. You can put whatever amount you want. As long as we hit that 15 at the end of this, when we hit it, we're going to show you something you've never seen before. And believe me, you'll see it in the future, but you're going to get to see it now. And it's going to kind of play into this show. And you're going to ask questions when you see it. So before we get to any of that, we have another question for you, Stan. You ready?
Yep, sure. Let's go.
All right. Senior Spookfest says, what do you think of the orb flyover of the White House in 1952? And do you think we ever had contact? I think we might speculate on that later. Go ahead.
Well, again, very interested in all the history of around the country. 99% of what I do is focus on Pennsylvania because it's nonstop. I mean, as long as I've been doing this, it's just nonstop reports. I mean, if you look at the synopsis I sent to you, Ron, and people can go to my website, stangordon.info. I think it's almost 20 pages long. Yeah. And there's just amazing stuff just from last year. That's just a sampling of the reports that have been coming in. So that's not all of them. That's just, I grabbed some really interesting cases and put them there for people to take a look at. But, the sightings over Washington, that's a famous case. You had pilot reports. It was tracked on radar. It was an amazing series of reports. And I believe for sure something went on there. That's a very, very good incident. And there have been major UFO incidents throughout the country and parts of the world. And everybody talks about the Phoenix Lights reports. But there was a case I was involved in here in Pennsylvania that should have made bigger national news because it was even better documented at the time. And again, this going from memory. This was, let me see, February 1992. And this was over Williamsport, Pennsylvania, up in Lycoming County, which, by the way, interestingly, Lycoming County is one of those areas up in northern PA that is part of what the region is known as the Black Forest region of Pennsylvania, which has a long history of Thunderbird sightings, Panther sightings, UFOs, weird stuff. But there have been sightings for years. But this was a major incident. It was in the afternoon, as I recall. There were many, many witnesses that saw this huge, solid, kind of a triangular, boomerang-shaped object. There may have been more than one involved. There were several counties during that time. And this thing was seen right over the populated area. This thing was moving so slow that there were people walking underneath and keeping up with it as they're walking. And this now, in a high percentage of really good low-level UFO cases we have, quite a lot of them are completely silent. But this thing was, when we get reports of UFOs that make sound, quite often it's a very, very loud, disturbing type of sound. This thing was making this loud sound, almost like a train coming down the tracks, but there's no trains in that area. So people were running outside because their windows are vibrating, their animals are going crazy, and they run outside, and they see this thing very low in the sky. And there were reports for miles around, very detailed accounts. I remember at the time I was in contact with, I talked to the state police barracks in that area. They had numerous reports. I talked to the control tower at the airport there. They had no radar. They were getting many reports on it. Their radar was not picking it up. We checked the military sources. There was no military aircraft in the area at the time. It was a very, very detailed case. There was a MUFON investigator at the time I worked very closely with. I know he's passed away. He was retired. I believe he was the Air Force major. I think he was an engineer in the Air Force, retired. And he investigated and interviewed a lot of the witnesses. It was written up. I wrote a big article about it. It's been written up in some books, but it was a case that got a lot of local news. It was very surprising it didn't get a lot of national news, because this was not just lights. This was a solid structure. Very interesting case.
Wow, that is something. What we got? We got another one. John Smirka. Question for Stan. One of my favorite places to hike is Quebec Run. Have you had any Bigfoot reports from that area?
Oh, that area has been jammed with reports for years. That whole area of Fayette County, so you're looking at Dunbar, Fairchance, outside of Ohio, Quebec Run, all those areas. There have been incidents for years and years. If you go through some of my books, I think my latest book, Creepy Cryptids, has some reports in there from Quebec Run. And they've had everything from orbs of light coming out of the woods to Bigfoot encounters, all kind of stuff up there. I think we've had Black Panther reports up around that general area. Yeah, so there's been a lot of history of that area. So make sure you keep your camera with you just in case.
That's some sound advice, actually. And Tony asked a really good question. Pop that back up there just for 1 second, and we'll get
in just a second
to that. Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. Blessings, multiple blessings. Thank you so much. We're moving toward that goal, guys. Awesome. Tony asked a really good question. Do you think the Chestnut Ridge is what John Keel would have called a window area?
Let me tell you this. Here's what I found. You can be in the right place at the right time and have a Bigfoot or cryptid or UFO encounter. And what's interesting is in more recent years, we're getting more reports of Bigfoot in more populated areas where there's not a lot of woods around. So, for example, the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And I remember getting a report, 1975 maybe, that made, I think, national news, where we had a report of a Bigfoot in the afternoon, a small one, walking down a populated area near some apartment buildings outside of Philadelphia, as I recall. But over the years, we're getting more and more reports, even more populated areas, suburbs of Pittsburgh, such as Monroeville, Ted Hills, other areas around there. There have been a lot of activity, a lot of UFO activity in the last couple of years in the populated areas being reported. And, but anyhow, you know what, Ron, give me that question again, because I lost my train of thought.
Hang on, we'll pull it right back up. Where was that at, Joe? Here it is. Basically, it was, what do you think that this would have been one of those window areas that Keel would have?
Okay, so yeah, here's what I was going to say. That you can be in the right place at the right time and have an experience. However, there are certain geological, I should say, let's say there are certain properties that the phenomena seems to focus on. So everybody's heard about Skinwalker Ranch. So what I was dealing with here, especially in 72, 73, was that type of strange activity. That's when I first began to notice that there was a lot more to Bigfoot than just an unknown flesh and blood animal, which is what I thought it was. I at that time, I firmly believed that Bigfoot was some type of unknown primate. And then all these cases began to unfold. I'll give you a little history. So 1972, in a wooded area, only several miles from where I live, where people had lived for years in this big wooded area, individual landowners began to call me and said, all of a sudden you're hearing these screams and howls. They're seeing these weird lights around their house. They're seeing these little spheres hovering around their bushes in their yard. They saw a large, wide-shouldered creature chasing dogs. They were finding big footprints around their property. So this went on for quite a period of time. And I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? You got a Bigfoot, you got these weird lights. What's this all about? Then 1973 comes around, and first we had the biggest UFO wave ever documented anywhere. Hundreds and hundreds of UFO sightings all across Pennsylvania from January 1st to the last day of the year. And so you got to remember, it's 1973. There was no internet. There was no cell phones. But a lot of the local papers were covering stories. A lot of the statewide papers were picking it up, and some of the national news were picking up some of the investigations my team was doing. But also, there was a lot of reports in there in the news about police having sightings, things like that. And so my team's out there. Now, luckily, my research group, the first group was the Westmoreland County UFO Study Group. And luckily, again, we had a lot of research specialists in my teams. By 1973, I already had the group set up to investigate sightings across Pennsylvania. And we were really surprised that we're getting referrals from the news media, law enforcement across the state. So we are just jammed with activity and reports all year long. It was just crazy. So we have all these low-level UFO sightings, incidents on highways, objects hovering over vehicles, landing reports, incidents on the turnpike. It was just incredible. And then the summer of 73 is when we had the biggest Bigfoot outbreak ever documented that continued into early 74. And actually, there's been Bigfoot sightings reported in Pennsylvania every year since then. And a lot of those Bigfoot sightings were in daylight at quite close range, sometimes more than one creature seen together. In many cases, my teams would get on the scene within minutes to hours, where there'd be all kind of interesting different types of physical evidence at the scene, mainly with footprints. And that's another story I want to bring up to you, Ron. Remind me to tell you about that later. But that's when we began to have these very strange, high strangeness incidents come to our attention. Thinking that Bigfoot was an unknown primate, well, then we began to realize something's odd. One of the first things was we get out to these different locations, different times of the year, different ground conditions, including snow, and we'd have these very strange footprints, very large tracks, big strides between them that would go at this and then just abruptly stop when there should have been more tracks. It made no sense whatsoever. There's no way that could have been fabricated. And I'm sure you're aware that you probably have had those reports all over the country now. We're getting these kind of reports. And I started writing about that back in the 70s. And so the point is this. You have certain locations where the phenomena seems to focus on, and which is very active. There is a number of places here in Pennsylvania I've been aware of for years, different properties where there's a history of paranormal stuff, orbs of light, UFOs, cryptids, apparitions, all kind of stuff. And there's certain areas along the Chestnut Ridge or close to it where these kind of things are ongoing. So you have Eric Altman and the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society and some other researchers that I believe now was a little more over 2 years ago while investigating Bigfoot sightings in the area, they came across this very strange, very isolated, hard to access area, which is very active. They call Area X in this area in Pennsylvania. And I've been up there several times now. It is a very weird area. Of course, when I'm there, nothing ever happens. But to a lot of those people, they have seen things. They have documented these things. They recorded some of the orbs and other anomalies in that area. And it's a very active area for all kind of weird stuff. So you do have places like this where the phenomena, for whatever reason, seems to focus on. And I think that's really important to study these places as best as people can.
Oh, couldn't agree any more than that. How about you guys?
So the next question up is,
what do we got, Joe?
Valley unexplained phenomena.
Mid-Ohio Valley unexplained phenomena asks, the Kecksburg bell, could it have been an egg UFO and a stand that the military used to transport the UFO, meaning the bottom of the bell shape to be some kind of stand? I think they're referring to the the recent egg video, right? Could that have been the same craft, but it would have been on some type of stand, is what they're asking.
Okay, I don't know a lot about that. I've heard about it. I've seen a little bit about it. My understanding is that there was more than one object he saw, and one was the egg shape. Mm-hmm. And then, interestingly, if I understand it properly, he saw a second object that he described as more acorn shaped. Is that correct, Ron? Have you seen that?
It was called an 8-gon. That's what I thought too. It's 8-gon. He said it was basically a disc looking down from it. It was divided into 8 sections.
Okay, because I've heard another account that somebody said it was described more as an acorn-shaped thing. I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure.
Ooh, no, that'd be nice.
But anyhow, so you want to know if it's similar to what was seen at Kecksburg? Is that what the question was?
I think that's what it is. It's kind of a speculative question asking, do you think that, that could explain the bell, basically, because of the shape? It kind of looked egg shaped. So if it had there
were witnesses with Kecksburg, and I spent a lot of time from the day it happened when I was 16 years old documenting it, and I still on occasion get some leads on this case. And I would say that it was more of well, first of all, we know this one. There were witnesses who were standing within a few feet of it when it was on the ground, semi-buried in the ground after it had fallen. And then other people saw it very low coming over their heads before it fell into the woods. And then there was at least one other witness who saw it at the military base after it had been recovered out of the ground. They all described it as kind of an off gold bronze color, metallic, but one solid piece of metal. No weld marks, no seams, no fuselage. And they really indicate that it was more of an acorn shape. Some people might say it was a kind of a bell shape. One person said it looked like a chocolate drop shape, which is kind of similar. And so I kind of think that there was more of a definitive shape to it than just an egg.
Yeah. I mean, I had to work with you to model this thing. So I remember sending those proofs back and forth until we kind of got it pretty close. And that was one of your main things. It was like, no, it's got to be, it's taller. It's got this, there's no seams whatsoever. That was one of the leading things about it. There's no seams, no weld marks. Like you said, it's a solid piece, like it was cast, sort of. What else we got down there, guys? We got Kenny Hess wants to know has there been anything reported from Preston County, West Virginia?
Well, once again, my main focus is on Pennsylvania, but do I get reports from other states on occasion? So Preston County is right there on that border between Morgantown outside of Wheeling. Is that correct, Ron?
I think that's where he's talking about. Right, Joe? Yeah, that is the area.
And I know I've heard some reports down there. I don't have any specific I can think of, but there have been sightings, as you know, all over West Virginia as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that's come up Preston County, but I don't have any cases right at the top of my head.
Yeah. Guys, literally, Stan has just files and files of reports. It's kind of funny because, sometimes we'll catch up and we'll try to, share the data, and all I have to do is ask, all I have to do is say a date, and you can hear this man ruffling through actual physical files at times. So this is a real UFO researcher. That's what I want to point out here. This is how it used to be done, and it's not done that way too much anymore. There are actually physical files there. So when you ask a date or you've had a sighting, and he can cross-reference and see if this happened then. And sometimes you're going to get surprised because we've seen some correlations, or at least possible correlations to things.
Ron, you bring that up, and I'll just tell you something happened the last few days. It's kind of interesting. A man broke his silence to me a couple days ago. I know he's been talking to his family. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail about it, but he had an incident when he was pretty young, very, very detailed UFO account that he has kept to himself, kept telling his wife and a few other people, and he finally broke down and called me and told me about it. And he had a pretty good idea of the date and the year. But what he saw, I'm not going to go into it right now because I'm still going to talk to him more, but he described a UFO incident that the thousands I've investigated, there was similarities to it, but there was a couple details that were just kind of odd because of the configuration, what these things did for the period of time he saw it. And I can't access all of my records right now because a lot of things are packed because I basically ran out of room. Yeah. But I had some access to some of that year. And coincidentally, I found an incident with almost identical, similar reports, probably within 2 weeks of, and only miles away from where he was. And he was just pretty amazed. And I was pretty amazed when I found that.
See, that's what I mean. And this is why I tell you guys, keep the dates, keep your data. Let's write it down, keep it, because what he just said, that's a validation point. Okay, we got another question down here. Dewey from Deuster's Paranormal Research and Development. Question for Stan. What is your take on the 1955 Kelly, Kentucky Little Green Men encounter, the Hopkinsville incident?
Well, I have read the account many times. I've heard some of the interviews. I totally believe those people are telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And there have been other similar type of weird entities that have been reported over the years. Ron, you've had some strange reports. I've had numerous ones around here. I can tell you about some of them. But yeah, we've heard of something somewhat similar and different type of creatures that are clawed. One of the ones on top of my head, let's see, March 2011, if I remember, this up around East Brady in Butler County, which is north of Pittsburgh. Butler County also, long history back in the 60s of UFOs, landings, small humanoid occupants being seen, a lot of Bigfoot encounters, UFO cases. We had that famous case my team investigated in 1990 with made some national news where you had multiple witnesses involved in it. And way out in the rural area, they found several very large oval-shaped burnt areas in an area where something was seen coming down that evening. And people had waited a while before they caught anybody to come up to it, but it made the local news. And then the national news picked up after my team was there because, and unfortunately I wasn't there that night, so my team goes up, they're interviewing witnesses, they're gathering samples for laboratories to examine what may have caused the burnt areas. And by the way, when the lab reports came back, there was no indication of any type of accelerants. There was no indication it was fabricated. It was very interesting. But the night that my team was there, an object was seen in the sky, came over for, I think, almost 9 minutes. It was like a child's top hovering and spinning in the sky. And remember those days of the old big shoulder mount camcorders?
Oh, yeah.
Ron?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. 3 different people, one of the persons at my group, one of my team members, and 2 other locals all videotaped this thing hovering and spinning and then taking off at a high rate of speed. And that video made national news back then on TV.
Wow.
But anyhow, so going back to this case, in March 2011, man is riding down the road late at night, going down this rural road. Suddenly his headlight hit something to the right side in the field, which he thought at first was a deer. Suddenly this thing rises up from the ground, and takes 3 big steps in front of his vehicle and off into the woods. He got a very good look at it. He was very close to it. It walked in front of a big, like some kind of a detour sign, some kind of a local sign. He went back and measured the next day. It was 8 foot. This thing was taller than that. And this guy said to me, and I got to know this guy and his family very well. He's a professional. He's a businessman. He has an amazing background that he doesn't want me to get into. But anyhow, extremely credible. He said to me, he said, I hear people talking about Bigfoot. He said, this thing was not a Bigfoot. He said, this thing was at least 8 foot tall, but was covered with light, leathery skin. It had a head shaped like an aerodynamic helmet. The legs were like moving backwards. It had claws for its hands, and it had wings tucked into its back. So it's become known as the Butler gargoyle. Wow. And supposedly there have been other reports in more recent years, but within days after he saw it, Dan Hagman up at the Butler Research Group, he had interviewed several other independent witnesses who had seen it up in that area also as well. So you get these sporadic outbreaks of these various weird cryptids, and they come in every year. We're getting reports of weird things. It is just amazing. And, you can't just eliminate this because you got individual reports. You got people who don't know each other. They're all reluctant to talk about it. And it's amazing the similarities and the patterns that are showing up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you've said this before, it's like, it's so strange. It's almost like the phenomena tries to hide itself and, in the strangeness. And yeah, I can totally.
Yeah, what I've said is the phenomenon is so strange, it protects itself.
That's it. Yeah.
Because it's so bizarre, so unusual. Generally, if you don't see and experience it yourself, it's hard for people to believe.
Yep.
And that's just how it is. Whether we like it or not, we're dealing with things. I truly believe what we're dealing with is so beyond our present scientific understanding. Nobody understands, including the government. And I came to the conclusion years ago, there's more than one origin to the unknown category of the UFO mystery, or as the government calls them, UAP now. Yeah, I believe a small percentage of these things may be extraterrestrial. Do I believe the government has recovered objects that are not man-made? Yes, I do. That's one thing. But I'm telling you, a lot of what we're dealing with, some of the UFO reports, these balls of light, the Bigfoot stuff, a lot of the cryptid stuff, we're dealing with a phenomena that has a physical and a non-physical component to it. These things come and they go. They're here and they're gone. They change physical form. They leave evidence at times. And I'm telling you, it is so bizarre and so strange, but that's exactly what's going on.
Folks, you heard it here. We didn't say it. That was someone else who said it. So, do with that what you will, but that's our conclusion as well at this point, I think. Right, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Jen, for Stan, grew up in the Pennsylvania, Luzerne, and Lackawanna counties. Anything from those areas? I don't remember hearing anything as a youngster.
Oh, yeah. There have been a lot of sightings up in Luzerne County. In fact, maybe 10 years ago, I was invited to come to speak for a large library up in that area. I gave 2 talks a day, and we had huge crowds. And a lot of people were sharing their sightings with me, especially Bigfoot sightings, including, I know in the last couple of years, we've had Bigfoot sightings up around Luzerne County and some of those other counties as well. So there have been many reports. When you go up in that area and you start getting to the Pennsylvania-New York border, there's been a lot of activity even the last few years. There's one area that I've been in touch with one of the witnesses up there for years. He's a very experienced outdoorsman. He's had many encounters with the Bigfoot, the balls of light. He's recorded some of this on video. Yeah, there's a lot of activity up in those areas. The problem is this. There's reports everywhere. It's almost nonstop. But so many witnesses don't want to publicly talk about it still today. A lot of them, they're a little more willing because they're hearing more people in the TV shows and the media talk about it, taking it more seriously. But personally, a lot of these people still don't want to go public.
Oh, absolutely. And some of the, the higher strangeness factors that are involved, it makes them definitely want to not come forward, especially if we consider how some of these people have been treated over the years. Gary Schuler asks, for Stan, any sightings near the now decommissioned nuclear power plant 3 Mile Island in Middletown? Any chance since it shut down? Any chance since it shut down? Can you clarify that last part, Gary?
He's asking if there's been any sightings
any sightings since it shut down? Okay.
did he say Middletown? This is outside of Harrisburg, that general area. Is that correct? Is what he's talking
Yep.
about?
That was the nuclear power plant.
There have been numerous sightings in eastern Pennsylvania. If you go back on my website and go back to some of the reports, you have to scroll back. There's a lot of reports on my website from the last couple of years. There's some summaries on there. And yes, there have been some really good UFO sightings, a number of them along the Susquehanna River. There have been other reports around Harrisburg. There was an amazing daylight Thunderbird sighting last year outside of Harrisburg, a suburb at a traffic light intersection, where one of these things came down very, very low over top of a vehicle, and the person said she was in shock. She said this thing easily had, I think she said, around a 20-foot wingspan, and she was just afraid it could pick somebody off the road. It was so big. But yes, there are sightings in eastern Pennsylvania. It's not just southwest PA. It's from all areas of the state. But I probably have a better input for information southwest PA, but we get reports across the state.
Okay. Oz in the Woods asks, Stan, have you developed personal theories on what is going on with UAP? Nuts and bolts, projections, consciousness connections, tailored sightings seemingly targeting people. Any thoughts?
Well, that's
a big one, right?
Okay, well,
we can dissect it.
First of all, there again, in more recent years, the objects that the government calls the Tic Tacs, the more cylindrical wingless things, I've been investigating them since the 1970s. But in more recent years now, if you go to my website and you scroll through, you'll see a number of photographs from different areas of Pennsylvania of similar wingless cylindrical objects. So what we're getting, including last year, are a lot of beautiful afternoon, beautiful day reports of these things hovering, not high altitude, long, metallic looking, no wings, just hovering there, and in many cases just suddenly vanishing, or in some cases moving extremely slow across the sky, but most of the time just vanishing. And then over the years, we've also had reports of these things that are hovering there, very large, low level, and they slowly begin to fade from one end to the other, fade away until they're gone. And then we get other reports of those objects in other cases where they physically change form. And there was one case again, I believe it was November of last year, Jim Brown investigated. This was in Fayette County again. And here's what was going on. It was, I believe it was November. I think it was November of last year. No, November of the year before, because we're just over 24, so November 23. And it was a really nice day for November. So this person happens to be looking out the window, was going to go for a walk, and she notices this very large, solid, triangular object hovering about 50 feet over her neighbor's home. So she's watching this thing, and my gosh, what is this thing? So I better call my neighbor and tell her about it. So she calls her on the phone next door, and the phone's ringing, but she's not answering. So she walks over to that house. The lady's outside working in her garden. She had no idea this thing's hovering over top of her roof. So she points it out to her neighbor, points it out to this lady. They both watch this thing. It's changing physically from a triangle, I believe, to a square, then back to a triangle. They watch it rise up to several hundred feet over the top of the roof, and then goes off into the sky and disappears. But you get these reports of these objects doing this. They change physical form. I had one that changed from a big rectangle to a circular object, then back to a rectangle on a major highway several years ago in the afternoon.
Wow. Tony Breeden, multiple
thank you,
thank yous, multiple
awesome.
thank yous. All right. And Tony has a question. Stan, any reports of shape-shifting animals or shape-shifting Bigfoots in PA? And I'm going to guess, there probably is, right, Stan?
Yeah, there is. It's these reports. It's not just PA; it's all around the country.
Yeah,
and it's very strange. If you want, I'll be glad to go back and talk about some of those famous cases of 73, 74, where we first began to realize that Bigfoot was not just a unknown flesh and blood animal, was something much stranger. And of course, the one famous case is a woman who shot at the Bigfoot. Do you want me to tell you about that one again, Ron?
Okay, so for you folks who haven't heard this, I'm going to have him tell this just because this is kind of where we're at with the subject A and subject B thing. There may be a physical thing out there, but there may be something that's completely different. And here's a data set for you that makes you question a lot of that. So yeah, go ahead, Stan.
Okay. So I did mention here earlier about the first thing that turned up to us that was strange with the tracks. It just abruptly stopped where there should be more tracks. It just didn't make any sense. And then we began to see a pattern. We'd have a UFO sighting in a particular area. Within minutes, hours, and days later, we have a Bigfoot sighting or vice versa. And then we had this amazing case where we had a UFO and a Bigfoot seen together at the same time and place. And unless you want me to go into it just briefly, probably the most famous case was October 25th, 1973. Remember that evening very well. Got a call from a state trooper from the Uniontown State Police Barracks. Called me around 10:30 that night, said he just came back from this incident up on this farm. He believed there was something still possibly up there. He asked me to send the team up there as soon as I could, which we did. It was late at night. We got our equipment, our radiation gear, other equipment, and found our way up to Fayette County. Make the story very, very short. Yet 15 eyewitnesses observed this barn-sized red sphere about 100 feet off the ground, hovering and beginning to slowly move down towards the pasture on the farm. The farmer's son, which would be the adult in this group, was coming out to visit his family who owned the property. He sees people standing outside watching this big, large spherical object in the sky. He goes to a neighbor's house to get a better view, and it looks like the yap's going to land on his dad's farm. So there were two young boys in that house. So the three of them decide they want to go up and see what this thing is. He stops over his dad's farm, and he grabs a 30-06 and a handful of ammunition. He didn't realize that at the time he had two tracer bullets in that handful of ammunition. So you just get that luminous trail when you fire that bullet. Anyhow, they're making their way up towards the pasture. They hear this loud whining noise, these baby crying sounds. Dogs are going crazy around the area. And again, I'm giving you the short part of the story. They make their way up the hill to the pasture, and they're standing there in amazement. About 250 feet away, here's this large luminous object now on the ground or just above the ground. It's no longer a complete sphere. It's like a half a sphere, like a big white dome. About 100 feet in diameter, illuminating the area, making that loud whining noise. About then, they notice about 75 feet away along this barbed wire fence are these two huge air-covered Bigfoot-type creatures slowly walking their direction. The first one is about 8 foot tall. The one behind is around 7 feet tall. They're walking along the barbed wire fence one post at a time. The one kid sees them so frightened he ran out of the field. But these things were described as covered with dark matted hair. They had no neck. The arms were so long they extended below the knees almost to the ground. They were kind of stooped over. They had luminous, glowing green eyes, and they were making that baby crying, whining noise. The other kid yelled, "Shoot him, shoot him." The guy fired his first shot with a 30-06 over their head. That turned out to be a tracer bullet. He fires that second tracer. And when he fires that second tracer, the largest of the two creatures reaches out as though to grab at that tracer that makes that loud whining crying noise, and that huge luminous object in the field disappears. It doesn't rise up and take off. It just vanishes. At that point, the creatures turn around slowly, start walking back along the wood line. He's now firing live ammo from a 30-06 into the creatures with no effect on them whatsoever. I remember that witness told me before he passed away, he said, "I'll never forget. I'm hitting that thing with live ammo." He said, I've been hunting for years. I know I was hitting this thing. There was no effect on it whatsoever. It was just staring at me with those glowing green eyes staring at me as I'm firing into it with no effect on it whatsoever. So these two guys go back to their vehicle, go to the farmhouse, told the family what happened, went to a neighbor and called the state police. Trooper arrived 45 minutes later. Trooper told me when he got up on the scene, the area where the object had been on the ground, it was self-luminescent and glowing, about 100 feet or more in diameter. He said he had a flashlight. He could barely see the beam. He told me, he said, if I had a newspaper, I'm sure I could have sat down with a newspaper and read the newspaper off the glow. And the animals, the farm animals, wouldn't go anywhere near it. That's the very short part of the story.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the most documented cases in history, and it got much, much weirder during the night. Yeah, the whole story is in the Silent Invasion book. I don't have time to tell you the whole story.
It's
That
amazing.
was the first one. And the other story, which is even more amazing, which is the one that gave me the clue, among others, later on, that we're dealing with something that is not a completely physical creature, was February 6, 1974, in the same county but several miles away, not that far away from Ohio. Anyhow, so here's the lady that evening. She's in her cabin home deep in the mountains. Normal night, she's laying there watching television when she hears this noise on her front porch. She has an empty soda cans out there. Someone's knocking the pop cans around. So she had a pack of wild dogs that came through a few weeks before. And she figured, I think those dogs are probably back, so I'll grab my 16-gauge double-barrel shotgun, I'll load one chamber, and I'll just shoot overhead and scare those dogs away. Well, she proceeds to do that. She loads her shotgun. She starts walking up towards the front door. She turns on the switch to the outside porch light. She opens up the door and steps out, and there's no dogs there. But 6 feet in front of her, it's a 7-foot-tall, kind of gray-haired Bigfoot that put his arm straight up over his head as soon as she put the light on. He pulls the trigger. She said there's a bright flash of light like a flash on the camera, and that huge, hairy creature vanishes right in front of her. Her in-laws lived 100 feet away. They heard the gunshot, and they called her, asked her what happened. She told them the son-in-law grabs a sidearm, starts walking down that dark road towards her cabin home, and at some point he reportedly encountered 4 or 5 hairy people with eyes like coals of fire, started shooting at him randomly, ran into the cabin, and about then is when they saw this large luminous object like a big Christmas ornament hovering over the trees at the same time. That's when they called the state police for help. So, Rod, some of your listeners will remember the time period. It was February 74. There was a big national trucker strike. There was gas rationing across the country. There was violence going on in many states. So here in Pennsylvania, you had members of the National Guard and the state police patrolling together. Some members of both teams responded to this incident. I couldn't get gas early the next morning where I lived, so I had to wait to get up there the next day. I talked to the investigating officer, and he said by the time they found the location, everything was over. But he said, one, the witnesses are very credible. They're visibly very shaken. They gave very detailed accounts of what took place. But he said what convinced him was the animal reactions on the farm. He had numerous types of animals. The animals were very nervous, not acting right. They had several very large dogs that would not make a sound when they arrived. They wouldn't bark. They wouldn't move. They were cowering. Next morning when I got up there, everything was back to normal. They're all barking like normal. But you've heard this yourself, Ron, I'm sure. I saw this years ago, and again, even in recent years, we're getting reports like this. Even the most ferocious dogs, when they're generally in the vicinity of these creatures, they are just like paralyzed. They won't move. They shake. They cower. Sometimes I have reports they're laying on the ground. Their eyes are moving around, but they won't bark. Sometimes they won't eat right for 2 or 3 days later. We keep hearing these reports, and that's fascinating. That was the case among others that suggests that we're dealing with something that has a physical and a non-physical component to it. And I'm finding similar cases involving other cryptids as well, where similar things are happening. And we've had reports. I've heard these reports. I've heard people I've interviewed who said they have seen one creature physically change into another creature. I've heard reports of these balls of light below the ground, and there's some amazing documentaries out there now where other witnesses are talking about this now, where the balls of light change into a Bigfoot, believe it or not, or a Bigfoot change into another creature. It is so weird of what's going on out there. And I'm telling you, it's all energy connected somehow.
What he just said, the whole energy connection thing. We're going to go into that in just 1 second. But Rob has a question. Stan, have you ever heard of anyone seeing the blue-white rods of light vertically in the sky before a sighting?
I've heard of various type of light anomalies. You know, a lot of the researchers out in the woods, they're seeing not only the balls of light, they're seeing other light, masses of light. They're seeing, I've heard of like blue pillars of light. But you got to be careful now, especially in this time of the year with the weather conditions, because you can have these ice pillars that look like vertical columns of light, but it's a weather phenomenon. But the case that I'm talking about was not in the wintertime. It was warm and nice, so they have seen other type of light phenomena. And I told you when we started, Ron, I have never personally seen a Bigfoot or UFO. I've seen evidence. But I do remember, I talked about this a little bit in South Invasion. My teams were out there day and night in '73 with all this weird stuff going on. It was like living a sci-fi movie, but it was really happening. It was just incredible what was happening. And on occasion, even in beautiful weather, we'd see this very weird looking, almost like what some people call heat lightning. But there was no conditions, there were no storms hundreds of miles around in the area to create it. And you just had the feeling that when you saw this appear in the sky, that it had something to do with what was going on locally. It was very, very strange. And I think we all had weird feelings when we would see this.
Well, that's wild. Shelley Montgomery, question for Stan. How many cases have you come across of experiencers getting certain times of day, night, and direction from the sky to look, and to the second something happens, I guess, when they look?
Can you repeat that again, Ron? I didn't really catch everything.
Sure. How many cases have you come across of experiencers getting certain times of the day or night and direction in the sky to look, and to the second something happens? So in other words, they get this impulse to look and boom, there it is.
Yeah, that's quite common still, even in recent years. Mm-hmm. And quite often, 3 o'clock in the morning, times around 3 o'clock in the morning, for whatever reason, is often something that people tell me that they're awakened. They have this overpowering feeling that they need to go outside. I can remember one case, oh my gosh, it's going back to the 60s, from outside of Pittsburgh. Now, some of my team members did a lot of the investigation, but I remember going up to interview this guy. This was one of the early alleged abduction missing time cases, and this reportedly would have these feelings during the night that he had to go up and he had to run into the woods, and he reportedly was taken aboard an object and was given various type of experimentation were done on him. But the one thing that stuck out in my mind, and he told me back then, years and years ago, this was long before most people were hearing anything much about UFO abduction cases, was that the creatures to him, they were small, they were humanoid, maybe 3 to 4 foot tall, but he said they looked like Pillsbury Doughboys. And I always thought that was interesting.
Pillsbury Doughboys. Now that is an interesting one. No, I had not heard that description actually, but I can totally understand it. Guys, it sounds familiar, right? Yeah, there you go.
We're going to close out question time.
Yeah, we're going to go over now. I want to thank every single one of you for asking those questions. We'll open it back up for questions here in just a second, but we are going to now play some stuff, and we're going to get some reactions from our panel, including Stan. This is from what originally happened here just the past week with the Jacob Barber story. The pilot who was transporting the craft. It doesn't matter what some people think. I've heard all these theories and all these stories, but here's what I'm going to play for you. I'm going to play
armpits and belly buttons.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to play for you something that we did in January of 2023, and we're going to see how that lines up with what just happened, actually. So here's a clip from an earlier show, Wild and Weird. This is Wild and Weird Radio, I believe, right, Joe? This wasn't live. This was Wild and Weird Radio, I think. Pretty sure. Here we go. Incorporated under EarthTech International, Inc. In 1991, as an innovative research facility with a high-powered creative staff dedicated to exploring the forefront research of science and engineering.
What this school or institute, rather, was actually working on is the search for extraterrestrial visitation. It's also listed among EarthTech's current research interests.
SETI's out there in the public saying we're looking for extraterrestrial intelligence, whereas these guys are behind closed doors talking amongst themselves, and they're beyond that. They're now looking for extraterrestrial visitation.
Yeah.
Something has changed in the game, and we can clearly see that something has changed in the game over those decades, right? That's what we're pointing at here.
Right. The approach to interest, to investigating phenomena, to acknowledging phenomena, to now looking for extraterrestrial visitation. They're looking specifically for places and people that have been visited.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder where they got the information at that said that such things occurred at this point. So in 1992, allegedly, I'll say allegedly because we don't know for sure, Gordon Novell contacted an abductee on behalf of Hal Puthoff. John B. Alexander also approached this individual. Their objective was to get DNA and recruit this individual to interact with ETs.
So why would you do that?
Wait a minute.
Why would you?
About this.
Why would you need that?
Well, why would you consider that?
Would it be, hypothetically, because they had seen a pattern?
I mean, you mean like the pattern we showed here? That pattern?
That pattern?
That progressive pattern that, we made contact with something psychically on a psychic level, and that might actually be real. Oh, what better way to get back out there? Well, let's use psychics.
But not just any psychics.
Nope.
But
Nope.
Psychics who've made contact.
Bingo. So it's literally what? Go ahead, Joe.
Psychics who made contact.
Psychics who made contact, right? I
This
mean,
is news again today.
Yeah.
It was on your Paranormal Horizon Productions that we put together. Is I think episode 2 that we put together for you guys. We demonstrated the psychical aspects of this. It was demonstrated back then all the way with that was just a research project from the 90s. It goes way beyond that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there does seem to be this aspect to it. And I know that there was a lot of pushback against Jacob Barber when he came out and he was talking more about this psychic connection to the phenomena. And there were so many of these researchers who just absolutely flayed him. This can't be real. This is nonsense. You're talking about, hokey stuff, and we're talking about UFOs. Well, here's the thing. If you're a real researcher, and I'm going to ask this of the panel, including Stan, if you're a real researcher, it's your duty to look at everything objectively and to put everything on the table. It's not your duty to look at everything and just say, this doesn't fit into my wheelhouse. This doesn't fit into my box, and therefore it cannot be. That is an issue as far as I'm concerned with modern ufology. Any thoughts, Joe?
Well, my thoughts have been immediately interrupted by Eyes in the Woods because
Eyes in the Woods. Thank you.
Oz, you are awesome.
By the way, Oz says, put it back up there for a sec. Put it back up there for a sec. I didn't get to read it to Stan. Stan is a legend. Thanks for the up to ask questions. This is fantastically. Okay, thanks, Oz. I'm glad you enjoyed that. He says, obviously, thank you. Larry, keeping it free. Thank you, brother. This is absolutely blessings to each and everyone. You're just 6 away from that exclusive, guys, but you only got like a half an hour to do it, so you better get in there. Okay, so Joe, you know what I just played, right? You guys heard that, right? This is the follow-up, and this was just from last week. So think about what you just heard.
So I've done a study over the past 3 or 4 years through the Institute with Hal Puthoff, where we've actually put people in a situation where they were in areas that have UFOs or have UAPs present, and we took their narratives out and also looked at the surrounding signals around them. And sure enough, they always claimed in their narrative state that, I felt like I was being instructed to do something, or I felt like I was being told that I should be doing something, or I was told that something is amazing and having a wonderful period.
People who are having experiences and
Yeah, exactly.
outwardly experiencing very positive reactions.
Yes. And Adam, what would you like to comment on that? Anything?
Well, a good portion of it is also how much fear you bring to this. I mean, if you come in with an open mind, open heart, whatever you want to say, the less fear you're going to have. I mean, if you come in blasting, it's going to come back in a negative reaction. But if you come in just openly, it can come into your living room and you can have disclosure in your living room.
That makes sense. Dave, what's your thoughts?
Well, the subject of interdimensional travel has been around for quite a long time, but more apparent recently, like even in the hearings that have taken place, congressional hearings and everywhere. So with this whole thing with Barber and people not believing this, like some of the psychological, bringing these things down with their minds, if people are willing to go out on a limb to believe the interdimensional part, then there's reason to believe that's a possibility as well, because both seem kind of crazy. I mean, if you think about it, but yet nobody's raising as much of a fuss for the interdimensional part, but the psychological part is just as out there as the interdimensional part, if you want to think about it that way.
That's a really good point, Dave. That is absolutely a great point. Stan, you've always spoke to the possible extra dimensional aspect to this and how that's just, it, and you went to that because it made sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it literally, that's where you go to when you look at the data. So what you're saying, Dave, is if they're okay with the extra dimensionality, then they should be okay with some sort of consciousness, a psychic connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been into astronomy for many years now. Then just over the past few years, been taking up the astrophotography part of it, and that gets your mind thinking more about things. I'm not gonna claim to be an expert. I mean, I've had a lot of coursework in astronomy in college, and so I'm a very enthusiastic hobbyist.
He's a stone's throw away from an expert. Okay, don't let him fool you. Go ahead.
But when you look at the travel between galaxies, or just even in our own, universes in our own galaxy. Sorry, solar system. I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to eat something. The amount of light years to travel in between places, it's just, you look at, it's virtually impossible for something to travel that far. I mean, when you have something that it's, let alone 4 light years away versus 100 light years away or millions of light years away. I mean, the technology, even for an advanced civilization that's, say, maybe they're even 100,000 years older than us. It's just too hard to fathom the technology exists to travel that far. So the only thing that would make sense is a technology that could use some kind of interdimensional travel, in my opinion. So I don't think that's too far out, because technology we have now, just these our cell phones versus 150 years ago, we're less than that. That'd be considered witchcraft, that kind of technology. So why not?
Dave, you're playing music.
Yeah.
By the way, everyone, Dave used to, still does. You'll hear Dave from time to time in the background tracks of the Wild and Weird Radio. He's an incredible musician as well. Don't let him fool you.
Oh,
Tony
shucks.
Breeden says, to riff off of Dave, the extra dimensional possibility also includes the notion of quantum entanglement, which opens up the idea of instantaneous interdimensional travel.
Yeah. I mean, it's not out there as far as these experts want us to believe, is what we're trying to get at, right? One of the more interesting aspects of this was there was another clip that we watched. If you watch that clip, I'm not going to play it because it's a little long. But if you go and watch the episode, and I believe that was Making Contact. It was from January 13th, 2023, is when we originally aired it.
It was before we were going live.
Yeah. And it's a great episode. There's 2-part episode, and it talks about how the government possibly started to make contact with this, from a psychic standpoint, basically. But what's really interesting about it is that this is literally what Barbara was describing when he was talking about the what do you call them, sonics, right? That sonic assets that these people were calling in these things, Adam, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We've
Yeah.
had you in the field multiple times now, and I've seen things now that I can't multiple times. Once I can give you, wow, that was really cool to just put you in there and have these things happen. I don't know if you got to watch it, Stan, or not, but Adam was in episode 2 of Paranormal Horizons, and we documented a case where we were actually doing an experiment of intent, because one of our friends had suggested that Glenn Adkins had suggested that, their early research into Bigfoot, they basically went out and had this intent, and they believed that was part of, creating an atmosphere and calling these things in. So Adam goes out, and we hook him up to a brainwave monitor. And we actually have somebody that's reading it. We know he's going into this really deep, relaxed state. Now, what's interesting is as he's doing this, we have our other guys out in the field, and they encountered now Joe didn't see it, but Larry and Scott saw it. They saw what would amount to an orb at the time, a blue light, I believe, or something they described. But more importantly than that, there was an incident where something kept following Joe and that team around all that night, and something came close to our camp while you were conducting one of these as well, right, Adam?
Correct. Yeah, and it's something that I've been connected with all my life. And yeah, do you
What is
hear
that clicking? Yeah, I hear that. Is that you, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know.
It might be this. I don't know. Maybe it is me.
Quit clicking, Dave. Anyway, sorry about that.
It's interdimensional.
We're professionals over here.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well, weird sounds come up whenever I'm, in
they
the
do.
So
Yeah, they do. But seriously,
I'm wondering we aren't hearing.
It's mostly in the realm of rumbling guts and.
Yeah. So seriously, Adam, you've also been out with us, and they'll get to see this in the future. There's some things that took place at some sites, and you did this again, and there was actual activity that happened. So yeah, why don't you just really quick tell people what you did? Don't give them the exact whippoorwills, exactly. Don't give them the exact what happened, but what did you do? How did you do this?
I went into a meditative state, which is part of the fourth mind, and trying to have intent, create a welcoming atmosphere, and a communion, more or less, with the world around me, and welcoming in whatever can be shown or what can come and interact with us. I call them my friends. I also call them my family. And it's something that has been ongoing throughout my life. And you go into this meditative state, you create this atmosphere, and you're just there with it. the few times that we've been doing this, that I went out into the field with you all, and I've told you all later, but like the nights before, I spend a time with a group, and we meditate and put more intent into it. And I feel like that's been beneficial, but I try to meditate every day, at least 2-3 times a day, especially at night. And the activity, even leading up to today, has been getting stronger.
Yeah.
And I've
So
even had shadow beings.
that's what I was going to get at. So when you're doing these things, it's not just, UFOs, UAPs that occur. There can be other things. You can see, like you said, shadow beings, orbs, audio, clairaudience kind of things, like where you're hearing things, right? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
a lot of times, also electronics. Like right now, whenever I've been talking, like whenever we let up into what we just talked about or what I just spoke of, we had
Yeah.
that clicking. There's that interference that interferes with your daily life. I mean, you come in, you start talking about it. I've had phones, drop calls while you're doing this. I've had messages disappear and everything else. I mean, it goes from electronics to whatever. I mean, whatever you think can go wrong. It's made me really good at IT, fixing
Really good at
problems.
IT. There you go. Well, that's probably why we can never get Stan and Joe to be able to hear each other on these shows. So
Exactly.
So there's probably an ET
I-
or extra dimensional, explanation for that. Stan, have you
we
personally?
probably need,
Yeah, that's it. Have you personally ever seen or witnessed any type of this C5 type experiments yourself?
I have not, but I've talked to people over the years that have told me that they themselves, sometimes when they're seeing these things, they have a very emotional response to it. They sometimes feel as though whatever is associated with the object in the sky is personally trying to somehow to communicate or interact with them. So I've heard those kind of reports, but once again, of the majority of reports, we don't hear those type of things occurring.
Wow, that what you just said is pretty amazing. I'm going to play a clip, and this is from one of the guys who was. If anyone who watches, Skinwalker Ranch, you'll recognize him. This is one of the lead scientists out there that they were posing the questions to. He also worked with Allsap and worked with Hal Puthoff directly. And just this clip, think about what Stan just said, and just this clip.
Yeah, so I think it's a conclusion at this point that whatever this is not a radiation source. It is a information source that actually happens to be absorbed by your body in that looks like radiation. But I think primary is that whatever this is trying to communicate to you.
Now, I disagree with this in the sense that, yes, okay, you might be trying to input data in a way and it's being rejected by the conduit or whatever. However, we have scientific devices that says, yes, in fact, it is a source of radiation, and that these burns and these things that are occurring are very likely from sources of radiation.
Well, he doesn't discount that, but the thing is, it's a real thing and it's external. That's what you need to take away from this. This isn't something that people are making up in their head. It's not something that you're dreaming up.
Radiation blisters.
No, you can't. Can you? Well, I was speaking on radiation. What's our count? Are we close yet? Are we close? Where are we at?
9 out of 15.
Where are they at? 9?
9 out of 15.
Oh man, I tell you what. Somebody does one more, I'll do it. It was kind of a lofty goal. I just wanted to see if you could pull 15, but we'll do our normal 10. So anyone throws up yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can be like $1. It doesn't matter. Whatever the lowest amount is, it doesn't matter. And we'll show this, and it's kind of relevant to what you just heard and what Joe was kind of saying. And it's interesting to say the least. It's it's something that we've managed to capture.
And I'm not straight out disagreeing with this guy. He's a scientist, and I'm just an idiot from West Virginia. But the base principle here is it is measurable. It's not just a reaction to a stimulus that manifests in a way that appears to be like radiation. When we are most definitely recording and measuring levels of radiation.
Yeah, well, he's talking about it radiating in a different way, though. I think he's not really talking about what we're catching, but we're definitely catching radiation. We've caught it a few times, actually. That's been documented. And again, we can thank Stan for that, since he's on the show. Because, Stan is the one who told me, the next time you go out in the field, why don't you take a Geiger counter? Well, I didn't have a Geiger counter at the time. And I'm like, you know what? Stan said take a Geiger counter. I'm going to buy a Geiger counter. So I did. And that inspired quite a few, inspired quite a few of our researchers here to do the same thing. I think almost everybody over here on the panel now has a Geiger counter. So not sure you're going to get a commission on that, Stan, but you might, maybe you should.
Maybe I should go in that business, but but yeah, it's a very rare thing. But that's something that I started to notice possibly that maybe it would be good if different researchers would have some other equipment to see if we get these type of reports coming in. This kind of data was showing up, but we've taken various type of electromagnetic detection equipment out, things like that over the years, and there's definitely it's an energy connection to it, and I think we're going to get more and more data on this as time goes on, and you're coming up with some good things down in your area, from what I understand.
Oh yeah, man. Thank you so much. Because again, seriously, if you wouldn't have said that, we would be doing just the same thing that pretty much everyone else is with EMF detectors and so forth. But at this point, we're trying to grab everything, all spectrums of this, and just trying to get some multiple validation points. And we have definitely, how many Geiger counters do we have now? I think we have like 1, 2, 3, something like, I think we have like 3 different Geiger counters, and that's double redundancy when you have these things going off, in these select areas.
Across the team, I think we've got 4 different.
Is it 4 now?
Yeah. 4 different models, and I think there's 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
But, there's other effects being reported too.
Yep.
I couldn't hear your conversation, so I don't know what's going on behind the scenes at this point. But, there are so many outdoorsmen and hunters in more recent years and over the years are talking about that overpowering fear sometimes before they have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter. And quite often what turns up is that the whole general area, all the nature sounds suddenly go quiet. All the birds stop singing, the frogs quit chirping, everything goes completely quiet, which is very odd. And then some of these people talk about this overpowering fear, whether it's infrasound or whatever, that some people are talking about. But when I'm hearing more and more from these fellows that have been out in the woods for years and know the areas that are in, and they suddenly are completely disoriented. Everything looks physically different to them. It has been normal seconds before. It's like they're in a different place. They don't recognize it. I've heard reports of changing personality temporarily when some of these things happen, when there's a group of people there. I've heard of trance-like states. I mean, it is so weird, these kind of reports that are coming in. There is something else going on here, and it's very, very strange.
Yeah, and that's the biological aspect of this, because I've told you guys before, we get a lot of questions, right, Joe, where people ask us, I'm getting into this, what equipment should I get? Well, you don't have to start off right at the top. We didn't start off at the top. We started just getting little pieces and adding for years. I've had I started in ghost hunting and, paranormal research. So I've had this stuff just building up over the years. And then now with Wild and Weird, we just have, we've got a lot of stuff, and it's mostly thanks to you guys. But here's the thing. You are one of your best sensors. The biological, sensing basically that all of you do. Like Stan was saying, the fear response, You've all been there. You've all been in an area, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is no good. I got to go, and you don't know why. You just do it. Well, there's a reason for that. There could be one of these, one of those signals that you're kind of getting at that point. So it makes sense to do. And I think we hit the number, right, Joe?
Yeah, we've got two of them right here. The girls have summoned.
The girls have summoned this video. So there will be no blessing, but there will be this. And we're going to scrub this later. So bless you all. Bless you, bless you. And here's what I want you to see, okay? It's going to be short. It's going to be quick, but I want you to watch this. And we're going to discuss it. And then this is going to be just like the Men in Black. This is all going to be erased from your memory until it comes back out. Here we go. Could you see the ground? Could everybody see the ground there? I want to make sure that everybody saw it. So please.
Yeah,
phone video or phone photographs of objects that are hovering not that high in the sky, and quite often they're fully charged battery within a very short time completely drained the power. In other cases, there's a malfunction of the photograph, the camera system. It will not work. I remember a fellow last year, there was a large triangle very low over his head. He hits the record button for video on this camera. He sees on the monitor, he sees the object on the video on the monitor. But when that is recording, when he plays it back, there's nothing there. That's been going on more and more. I had one case, oh my gosh, this is going back, 10, 12 years ago. And this was up in the mountains around Donegal, PA, where there's a lot of sightings in Acme, Donegal area. And it was a beautiful morning. He's sitting in the kitchen right next to the window at the table. His dog's lying there. He's drinking coffee. Suddenly it got completely black out, just instantaneously, like a terrible storm come out of nowhere, and it didn't seem right. So he grabs his fully charged phone, and he yells to his dog to go with him. The dog goes everywhere with him. The dog refused to go outside, which it never did that before. He walks right outside to his driveway, and about 500 feet above him is this huge, solid, silent black triangle. First thing he does, he grabs his phone camera, starts recording, and moments later, his fully charged battery is completely drained of power. That's the kind of thing that's going on more and more. I've talked to other people who have some very good night vision equipment, some recording equipment up in northern part of Pennsylvania. They've had cases where sometimes they have been able to record some of the small spheres that you're seeing, the orbs, but in other cases, the equipment completely fails, lost all the power. Technologically, it's not operating properly. That's being reported quite a bit.
Wow. So there's you some stuff.
I'm going to go through these comments really quick.
And just now, I'm just getting an email that apparently in the last week down in eastern PA, there have been several reports of some odd things in the sky, and apparently there's some videos. One might show some type of triangle object. I don't know, but hopefully the people will contact me. I just got that. This came over on an email.
Wow. So there you were. You were here for that, folks. That was in real time. What you got, Joe?
We got some comments rolling here. I want to get to those real quick.
Yep, put them up.
Dancer with Orb says, what were you filming with? We were filming with an AGM Taipan thermal imaging unit. We had those, and then Wanberry says it's like it's got a heartbeat.
Yeah, it was
Larry
weird.
Hose says it's radiating heat. Anita said the moving light. Yes, that's what we're talking about. And it wasn't all technically light. It was a thermal radiation signature.
Yeah, thermal radiation. That's what it was. Yeah.
Then no fog, no
fog,
dances.
no.
There was no fog that night. There was really hardly.
It was hot,
which you will actually see in the film.
Yeah.
Microwaves, we did detect some, but not in that immediate moment.
Not enough.
Not enough to do that. Eyes in the Woods says the pulsing looks like some of the lights in the desert mesas filmed by Carl the Crusher. That sounds like a really strange porn name. Then Dances with Orbs says something definitely filling you out. Checking your vibe. They're just as curious about us. Could be. Kenny Hess says it looked like a wave, like a crop circle might be made.
Well, it was something. We don't know what it was, and you're going to get to see more. That was just a small clip. Trust me, there's a whole lot more. And that will be episode after this one that's getting ready to drop. So this one will set all that up. It'll, they all go together. The journey has gotten only stranger, and I really, like I said, I think we're trying to document the strangeness. Stan has talked about it for ages. And I'll tell you, once you look at the data, there's really no going back. There really is something there. Yeah. And for these people who think that this is an imagined, or that this is some form of hallucination, or, the I want to believe syndrome, you're not looking at the data. The data says there's absolutely something taking place here. It is external, and it is measurable. More than that, it is measurable on more than one piece of equipment. So our goal is not to get these really pretty fancy pictures, although every now and again we do get lucky, like with the orange orb. Our goal is to get maybe those pictures with some of this other corroborating data, or multiple data sets. What about multiple validation? I think that's what we're looking for.
Dave,
you got a question?
No audio, Dave.
Oh, Dave, you got no audio.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Yeah, muted. Right. That Dwarf Labs telescope I've been telling you guys about as a potential tool. What's funny is when that thing was advertised, it was advertised with a UFO or UAP follow function. It was actually advertised. Right.
That's
so. Right. We're getting one for the club that I'm in, but I'm gonna get one for myself eventually. Now I know of no cases where someone has actually managed to get the UAP to actually follow one
yet. Well, that's a challenge, Dave. So let's get that thing in here ASAP. Folks, you heard it. Maybe by the time we have our first meeting, maybe Dave may have that thing. You never know. You might get to see it. But I can promise you will get to see the Sea Star. He will have that there. And you're going to get to ask a lot of questions and probably learn a lot that night about some of these lights in the sky.
Oz in the Woods says, Carl the Crusher orbits Skinwalker Ranch, Wilson Ranch, and has had access to both locations. Huge YouTube followers. Oz don't do those sites, Joe.
Okay, that's great. You guys are funny. Oh, man. Well, we are coming up on that time. Stan, do you got anything coming up? What's coming up besides Kecksburg? We know Kecksburg's coming up.
Oh, I'll tell you, I am booked for many events already this year. I know there's other things. I have a lot of local events and other ones. I've gotten calls from around the country, but I just can't do everything. But I'll be posting more and more on my website. I think one of the first big event is coming up down in Bucks County outside of Philadelphia, and that I believe is March the 8th. It's the Bucks County. I think it's the paranormal event down there. Is a really good one. It's with Eric Mentel. It's a very good researcher down there, and it looks like a very big event with some well-known names in the field speaking. I'll be speaking there. So that's coming up March the 8th, and I'll be at the Butler UFO conference up in Lindora, PA. I believe that's April the 26th, and there's a bunch of Bigfoot festivals and events around this area. Kecksburg is of course, a big event, and of course, this is the 60th anniversary of the Kecksburg incident, so it should be very interesting. July 18th through the 20th is a Kecksburg UFO Festival. People from all over the country come in for it. It's a great event, but I'll keep posting more on my website, which is stangordon.info. There's information on there how you can contact me, emails on there, phone number, and if you'd like to pick up one of my books, are available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. The most recent book is Creepy Cryptids and Strange UFO Encounters of Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of stuff in there we didn't talk about tonight. Creatures I know you never heard of before. A lot of really weird stuff.
Oh, there's some incredibly weird and terrifying stuff in that book. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, guys, that's going to pretty much wrap it as far as it goes with our special guest. I want to thank him for being here. I don't want to take up any more of his time. Stan, we will definitely be in touch. Obviously, we try to get you in here at least once, twice a year, so you can give everyone an update on what's going on. And it just so happened that you fell in at the right time on this one. I think it was kind of a what would you say, guys? A fortuitous event. I think that's
synchronicity. Everything happens for a reason.
There it is. There it is. I didn't say it. You heard that from someone else. So
It's almost interdimensional.
There you go. It's interdimensional, right, Dave? But no, seriously, thank you so much for being here with us, Stan. We will get you back on at some point in the future, and hopefully, like I said, we're going to try to make it up to Kecksburg. If so, I'm going to have to try to come up with something for that 60th anniversary, some kind of special edition. So, put me to work.
Sounds like fun. Well, it'll be good to see you again. And thanks to everybody listening in tonight. If you need to reach me, you can reach me through phone or email, and you can find out on my website, stangordon.info.
Well, I can tell you, everybody over here in the audience is blowing it up. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Stan. Thank you for being there. Stan's the man. Like, these are your people, my friend. That's what I can say.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan.
Well, guys, I think it's set and easy to say that next week's episode is going to be based on the consciousness behind the UFO phenomena, because we didn't really get to touch that much tonight. We will, however, be diving into this next week, because this is the hot button issue within the UFO community at the moment.
Well, it works out again.
Bit of data that we've logged to support this that you will see and have seen. So
no synchronicity. Well, the whole, like you just said, it's synchronicity. So these things happen for reasons. And by next week, we may have that 2-part or 2.5 hour addition to that interview at that point. If that's the case, we might have a whole lot more to talk about as far as that goes. But there's definitely a consciousness aspect to this, I think. And Adam is a huge part of it for our team anyway. Is this the first time that we've had all
pleasure. You're welcome.
4, like the 4 main, I guess, guys in the UFO area on the show at this point?
I think it happened once before.
Did it?
Shortly after, it was when Dave, one of the first times Dave joined us, we had
okay
all 4 of us, and then a rotating guest. Somebody else popped in. I can't remember who.
That's not a bad idea, We should pull these 2 in every now and again and just have them here for the discussions.
Anytime. I mean,
you got a zip code? I'll be there.
Well, next week, put it on your calendars, gentlemen. Next week,
you'll be there.
We will have you guys back on the show if you're willing to come hang with us again.
Yeah, definitely come out and hang with us. I want to thank everybody for asking those incredible questions. Man, you made his night. We've done this before, and we've never had that many questions. So that was phenomenal. And the next time we have questions, Joe will be able to hear them. Go ahead, Adam.
I know Tommy asked the question, and I saw it after kind of a little too late. I
left it hang on the screen for a bit, but we didn't get a chance to get to it.
Yeah. No, I do feel an electricity. It's like a pop, a zip, a pow, a zip, kind of, oh yeah, type deal, when you're right in it.
It's like that makes sense. Shows up in the Batman costume. Pow, bam, pow.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, guys, thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. You guys are awesome. Thanks, Adam and Dave, for joining us. You guys are great. Next week, we will be revisiting this. And like Ron said, hopefully we will be able to dive more into this full 2.5 hour interview.
I'm looking forward to it. So, we don't have a date yet, right? No one's said anything like when this is dropping. Soon. Just soon. That's all we hear, right? Soon. Okay.
Soon is one of those things that is variable.
Oh man, soon.
Especially when you're talking to work with government.
What's that? What was that, Adam?
Winter is coming.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
kind of like that whole.
Right. Oh, guys, thank you all. Thanks, everybody hanging out there in the audience. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. You are the reason why we keep rolling and doing what we do, and you keep the engines burning by putting fuel in the tank every week.
Dances, not yet. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. It's going to be soon. I can tell you that you've got your first half of the year guests over there now. So there's over here on the far right. Dave will be at number 1, and Adam will be at number 2. So it's going to be fun, especially with Adam, because we're going to be actually. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but you're going to want to be there because I've been to some of these things with Adam, and he's blown my mind. So be prepared.
All right, guys. That's going to wrap us up for tonight. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for commenting and sharing. Remember, go over to the video and drop some comments on the actual video itself. Jump out of the live chat as soon as this video ends. Go drop some comments because that really boosts us out in the algorithm and it makes the algorithm happy. That being said, when the algorithm's happy, more people see us.
It's true.
People see us, the more reach we're going to have and the more normal this kind of stuff is going to be able to become. So keep going, keep doing what you're doing. You guys are fantastic. And to the new folks who've joined us tonight, there's 4 or 5 of you guys that were newbies that jumped on. Welcome to the Weirdo family. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. And I saw a few of you had sightings. I dropped comments into the chat to throw you guys where to go send those sightings, and I'm going to remind you again right now. You can head over to wildandweirdwv.com, click on the report a sighting tab. It's going to send us an email with your sighting information, and we will be in touch with you shortly. Or if you can't get to the website or you just want to go a more direct approach, you can go to wildandweirdwv@gmail.com and just send it that way. There's unlimited characters on either side, so feel free to use either one. We will get to it, and we will talk to you about that sighting. If you want to support us, there's a website store. You can go there, hit the store link, grab a t-shirt. Hopefully, we're going to be having some new merch popping up in there here soon. I know Ron is developing one currently, and it's going to be pretty interesting. So keep your eyes open because you guys will usually get first dibs at those when they launch, and you'll be told when there's going to be discounts, etc. Thank you guys again. You all are awesome. And remember, there's no such thing as cold, only the absence of heat. And water can't get wet. Think about that for a minute. Stay wild and weird, everybody. Play the outro, dang it.